Greetings to you. This is Father Rock O'Connor, speaking and addressing to you folks at St. Catherine of Alexandria, Our Lady of Good Hope, and St. Bernadette parishes. Talking about my book, I Want to See. And in this episode, I want to look at chapter 6, dealing with the infirm, because I see in the healing stories in Mark's gospel the picture of something that doesn't quite happen. It doesn't happen at all with the scribes and Pharisees. And it only happens at the end, in one sense, with the disciples and the 12, seen in Peter's betrayal and then somewhat restoration at the end of the gospel. In the infirm, what's different about them in the healing stories is that they know that they need the divine physician. We don't see that with the scribes and Pharisees. We don't see that with the 12 and the disciples. They don't ask for help. So, nor do they recognize their need for the divine physician. So in this chapter, I talk about 5 infirm. I conflate in the first part the 2 stories of unclean spirits. Chapter 1, the guy in the synagogue who shouts out, "What do you want from me, Jesus of Nazareth? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. Have you come to destroy me, destroy us?" And the second one, the Gerasene demoniac, I believe that's chapter 5. He lives among the tombs, and when Jesus shows up on the other side of the shore, he comes out yelling at him. The legion is yelling at him, "Have you come to destroy us?" And answers that way. But then I deal with the leper, the person with the withered hand, a woman hemorrhaging, and a deaf man. And I deal with them in 2 ways. And what I want to do here is only look at the story of the man with the withered hand as kind of a paradigm or a model of how I look at these things. One is through the study of the Greek and discovering the connections, the network of meanings that come from how Mark uses the terms, and then how those Greek terms tie into the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament. The second way I deal with this is looking at the symbol of the infirmity itself. So I'm going to present a little bit more time here on the withered hand, and invite you to look at all these healings as Jesus' approach to you and me as the divine physician. Do we see the leper? Do we see the woman hemorrhaging? Do we see the man with the withered hand? Do we see the unclean spirit, the demoniac in the tombs? Do we see them in ourselves and discover our need for healing? So, Jesus is addressing the synagogue in chapter 3, and this person with a withered hand appears. He knows his situation, and the situation is fraught with danger. The Pharisees have been stalking and criticizing Jesus and watching him, hoping to discredit him and neutralize his influence. This is key. So Jesus asks them, is it legitimate? Is it good to heal on the Sabbath? And they were silent. They would not answer. And out of great frustration, great feeling, Jesus orders the man, "Stretch out your hand." And the hand is restored. The person's restored. So I want to look at the 2 things. The Greek word zerino, which means withered, and how Mark uses it, and then look at how the Septuagint uses it first. And then I'll look at the symbol of the person with the withered hand. Mark connects it surprisingly and wonderfully to the parable of the sower and the seed. And in his explanation, he talks about other seed falling on rocky ground where it did not have much soil. And it sprang up quickly since it had no depth of soil. When the sun rose, it was scorched, and since it had no root, it withered away, zerino. Having no root, it withered away. And then he talks about, and then these are the ones sown on rocky ground. This is the explanation. When they hear the word, they immediately receive it with joy. Yay! But they have no root and endure only for a while. And when trouble or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately they fall away. It's zerino here points to the lack of depth of soil, the lack of having no root in the word. And when trouble and persecution appear, fall away. And that's a key thing for us to consider about how do we deal with our lack of soil, with our temptation to superficiality? When trouble, persecution comes, do we fall away? In other words, then, do we need the divine physician to heal our rootlessness, our withered state? In the Septuagint, in the Greek Old Testament, Zerino links this passage to passages about the story of Israel in terms of its mortality, its faithless shepherds, and its idolatry. Those are the three of the key things that happen that are part of Israel's history. First, from Isaiah 51, God says, I am the one who comforts you. Why then are you afraid of a mere mortal who must die? A human being who fades, who withers like the grass. Mortality. And then in Zechariah, God, through the prophet Zechariah, confronts the shepherds. O my worthless shepherd who deserts the flock, may the sword strike his arm and his right eye. Let his arm be completely withered, become defenseless. His right eye utterly blinded. Now we'll see this in a moment about in another word, the connection between eye and hand. And finally, in Isaiah 44, all the devotees of the false gods will be put to shame. The makers of idols, too, are merely human. Let them assemble, let them stand up. They shall be terrified. They shall be put to shame. But actually, they shall be withered in their idolatry. Now I want to talk about the restoration. The notion of Jesus did not just have the man stretch out his arm and to heal. It doesn't say heal, but he restores the man. Apokathistemi. How's that for a fancy word? There's another healing in which Jesus deals with a man who is blind and and he says, the man looked up and said, I can see people, but they look like trees walking. Then Jesus laid his hands on his eyes again. He looked intently, and his sight was restored, that long Greek word, and he saw everything clearly. Mark uses this word to connect the restoration of sight and hand, and it's more than that. In the prophet Malachi, it says that Elijah, when we see a bunch, will return or will restore the hearts of parents to their children and the hearts of children to their parents. And in Jeremiah, the prophet says, through speaking for God, I will set my eyes upon them for good. I will bring them back to the land. I will restore them to the land. I will build them up and not tear them down. I will plant them and not pluck them up. So what this is saying to me anyway, is that in naming our need to be healed in terms of our fear of mortality, our faithlessness, and our idolatry, it's about restoration. It's about restoring us and planting us, as it were, in the fullness of God's love and presence today. Okay, second part. I want to talk about the withered hand as a symbol. So in the book, I invite you to kind of hold your hand as it might be withered, and this is the way I picture it anyway. What might that symbolize? If your hand is not available, what is it not available for? I'm not available to reach out and offer friendship, to receive friendship, to make overtures of peace, to receive peace, to commit, to reach across the aisle. That's timely. His withered hand signifies an impossibility of doing meaningful work, to create beauty, to fashion beauty, to open whatever is shut. At the same time, that it symbolizes either an inability or an unwillingness to receive other persons. Welcome communion, to receive communion, to receive gifts, to share gifts. I picture this hand clenched in resentment, in fear, pain, and shame. So, in Jesus, if this is the symbol, and this could be a good way to pray, if this is the symbol, what does it actually symbolize for me? How does it speak to me in my own life? Okay, and then stretch out, Jesus says, stretch out your hand. And the hand was restored. The person is restored to community. The person is restored to peaceful relationships, to commitment, to meaningful work, and to being able to create and fashion beauty, to welcome communion. In other words, there's a kind of isolating feature about this hand being withered, of being unable to have any depth of soil. And so restoration is an opening to communion with God and self and others. That's the picture of healing, and it seems like that portrays Jesus' commitment to restore the children of Israel, to restore the people. In speaking the word to them, and speaking the word today to you and me, it's an invitation to restore us. In speaking the word to the scribes and Pharisees, as well as to the disciples and to the 12, it doesn't find purchase in their hearts because of the obstacles they put up. So in one sense, disciples have withered hands. The scribes and Pharisees have withered hands. What is the obstacle that you and I put up to being restored by the word, to hearing the word of life, the word of restoration, the word of healing? What is that like? And what gets in the way of being restored. That can, I picture frozen hearts, not hard hearts, but frozen hearts. Can our frozen hearts be melted? So that's an introduction to chapter 6 on the Infirm, and I wish you a great blessing in dealing with this chapter. God bless you today. Thank you.